Hola a todos, saludos, buenos días. Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Cristobal. I'm here with my colleague Pau. We are part of Babilla Collective and we will be providing simultaneous interpretation between English and Spanish for today's call. Mi nombre es Cristóbal, estoy aquí con mi colega Pau y vamos a ofrecer interpretación simultánea entre inglés y español para la llamada de hoy. So just some brief instructions in both languages on how to activate the feature. You will see a globe icon that says interpretation on the bottom right of your Zoom screen. If you're coming in from a tablet or an iPhone, you'll see three dots that say more, then language interpretation, and then you can select your preferred language. If you would like to listen to the meeting in English, select English to hear the English interpretation whenever someone speaks Spanish. And if you'd like to listen to the meeting in Spanish, select Spanish to hear Spanish interpretation whenever English is spoken in the meeting. There's a third option to mute the original audio and only listen to the interpreter's voice. If you have any issue with the feature, you can message me or Pau. We have an interpreter in our name and we can help you troubleshoot. Ahora en español, quiero dejarles saber que pueden activar la interpretación viendo un icono de globo que dice interpretación en la parte inferior derecha de la pantalla. Ahí entonces pueden seleccionar su lenguaje preferido entre inglés o español. También hay una tercera opción para silenciar el audio original y solo escuchar la voz del intérprete. Si están en un teléfono o una tableta o un dispositivo móvil, van a ver tres puntitos que dicen más, luego interpretación del lenguaje y luego si quieren escuchar la llamada en inglés, escoger inglés y si en español, para escuchar la interpretación simultánea cuando se hable el lenguaje opuesto. I want to remind speakers to speak at a moderate pace, just a regular tone, so that we can catch everything you're saying and interpret accurately. If you're ever going too fast, we'll send a little turtle emoji in the chat to let you know to please slow down. También le queremos compartir al exponente que hable con paso moderado para poder interpretar adecuadamente y si en algún momento va muy rápido, vamos a compartir un emoji de tortuga para dejarles saber que deben bajar la velocidad. So that's all. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, you can write us in the chat. Muchas gracias y que tengan un buen evento.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mary Thomas, and I'm the Director of Programs at the US Latinx Art Forum. It is such a pleasure and an honor to welcome you to Materials of Place, Materials of Memory. As we begin this event, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the ancestral grounds I reside on in support of Indigenous peoples' ongoing stewardship and struggles to protect their cultural resources and homelands. I'm currently speaking to you from my home in Minneapolis, which is on the traditional unceded territory of the Dakota and Ojibwe peoples. Before we start, I wanted to share a few words about the US Latinx Art Forum. We're an organization that champions artists and art professionals through initiatives that advance the vitality of Latinx art and foster an intergenerational network that spans academia, art institutions, and collections. In 2021, we partnered with the Mellon Foundation, Ford Foundation, and the New York Foundation for the Arts to administer the Latinx Artist Fellowship. This fellowship awards $50,000 in unrestricted funds to each member of a multi-generational cohort of 15 visual artists each year for an initial commitment of 5 years. It's the first significant prize of its kind and celebrates the plurality and diversity of Latinx artists and aesthetics. It's designed to address the systemic and long-standing lack of philanthropic and institutional support for Latinx artists, and we're honored to be a partner for this groundbreaking initiative. 2025 marks the 10th anniversary of USLAF's founding, and we're thrilled to celebrate a decade of programming and initiatives that have fostered a dynamic community of artists and interlocutors, including those who have joined us today. It's now my pleasure to welcome you to X's Intersection, Materials of Place, Materials of Memory. This series gathers our fourth cohort of fellows into conversations with curators and members of USLAV's executive committee who all share a sustained commitment to Latinx art. It's a delight to introduce our co-moderators for this conversation, Susanna Temkin, Senior Curator, El Museo del Barrio, and Marina Reyes Franco, Curadora, Museo de Arte Contemporáneo de Puerto Rico. And with that, I'll hand it off to our co-moderators.
Good afternoon, buenas tardes, bienvenidos a todos. So nice to have you here with us today. On behalf of El Museo del Barrio and the Museo de Arte Contemporáneo de Puerto Rico, Marina Reyes Franco and I would like to join Mary Thomas in welcoming you all to this conversation on X as intersection, materials of place, materials of memory, co-organized with the US Latinx Art Forum. We also wish to thank the US Latinx Forum, Babilla, and the artists for their time and generosity in being with us. And I'd like to acknowledge the work, effort, and collaborative preparation that brought us here for what promises to be a dynamic exchange of ideas among the artists. This panel brings together Jenea Sanchez and Gabriela Muñoz of Fronterizx Collective, Gadiel Rivera Herrera, and Charo Oquet. The conversation will examine how the potency of material as a bearer of memory and ancestral connection is shared across their diverse practices. The artists will share how their art approaches materiality as a means of engaging with their regional homelands and spiritual cosmologies through an embedded methodology that transcends time, history, and place.
Together with Susanna and our audience, we look forward to delving into the worlds of our featured artists, exploring how their work engages with the historical and spiritual connections between site, resources, and inherited narratives. From the Mexico-US borderlands to Puerto Rico and South Florida, their geographical contexts inflect their practices in profound and unique ways, offering rich insights into the interplay of place, material, and meaning. Within this framework, Gadiel Rivera Herrera will discuss his work as a multifaceted visual artist whose practice encompasses ceramics, sculpture, drawing, and collage. Rivera Herrera's practice is deeply rooted in the history, mythology, and spirituality of Africa and the Caribbean, reflecting his Afro-Caribbean heritage. He will share how he has been inspired by his travels and the natural environment, including the Caribbean sea, flora, and fauna, to create pieces that tell stories and explore the connections between the spiritual and physical world.
Hearing from the women-led Fronterizx Collective, we will learn how this collective explores connection between the land and the body. Centering their work in community, Jenea and Gabriela will share how their process-based practice uses material like earth, cacti needles, and nopales to reflect on and root themselves within the physical and spiritual site of the US-Mexico borderlands. Fronterizx Collective will also share how the significance of these materials are nuanced, shifted, and change with their presentations across exhibitionary spaces. Finally, we will hear from Charo Oquet, whose practice crosses disciplines to encompass painting, performance, ceramics, photography, and installation. Exploring ideas related to diasporic identities, gender, migration, and decolonial radicality, Oquet adopts a syncretic and improvisational approach that is reflected in the range of found and sourced materials that she uses. Juxtaposing the tensions between playfulness and precarity, her exuberant aesthetics are undergirded by Caribbean spiritual practices and celebrations such as Haitian and Dominican Rara Gaga.
Through their presentations and the follow-up Q&A session, we aim to uncover the extraordinary power of material to convey concepts, references, and histories, reflecting the shared threads of intentionality and meaning that underpin artistic practices. Now, I'll cede the Zoom over to Gadiel, who will be our first artist presenting his work. This exchange will be, to our audience, this exchange will be in Spanish. Make sure you're in the correct language channel. For reference, the instructions are also copied in the chat box, and I thank Babilla Collective for that support. Over to you, Gadiel. Adelante.
Eh, Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Gadiel Rivera. Soy artista afrodescendiente, vivo en Puerto Rico y antes de continuar quiero dar las gracias por la oportunidad de estar participando en este diálogo. Eh, Me nutro de la historia afrocaribeña y suelo trabajar con diferentes materiales, eh, utilizando el barro, el papel, eh, materiales que encuentro como plumas, piedras, diferentes materiales. Podemos pasar a la próxima eh, foto, por favor. En mi trabajo, gracias. En estas fotos que estamos viendo, hay trabajos de diferentes momentos. Aquí estoy trabajando con cimarronaje, sincretismo. En la foto superior de la derecha, que es la obra Juego de Manos, está hecha con papel, cartón embreado, plumas, madera, tela, papel pintado con acrílico, plumas de guineas y una estampilla católica. Esta pieza fue un libro, eh, es un libro como de pared, lo perdí y ahora lo que me queda es la documentación, ¿verdad? Estoy trabajando con la guinea, que es un ave que se utiliza en la santería, muchas veces como se utiliza como objeto de sacrificio, como ofrenda a alguna deidad, ¿verdad? En la foto del centro, que aparece la mano, es toda con las plumas de guinea y una estampilla de la mano poderosa, que es de la religión católica. Así que estoy trabajando ahí como eh, hay un sincretismo entre esa cultura afro y lo religioso católico, utilizando esa gama de materiales. Eso lo hice en el 1993 y en el 2023 fue que se hizo, ya tenía la documentación y se utilizaron las fotos. Luego, en la parte de abajo hay un libro de artista que es Pop-Up, que le llamo Miradas. En ese trabajo, en ese libro, está hecho en collage, predomina, hay muchas imágenes de rostros, ¿verdad? Predominando las miradas con sus gestos. Eh, el mar aparece mucho en la obra porque estoy trabajando, estar consciente de que somos una isla y estamos rodeados del mar, ¿verdad? Así que ese elemento marino de mar empieza a aparecer en mucho de mi trabajo. Ahí estoy trabajando con el collage, libro pop-up, y en la siguiente, que es Guinea de Mangles, que está hecho en el 2018, la comencé y la terminé en el 2023 cuando estuvo en la exhibición de Puerto Rico Negro. Cuando la escogieron para la exhibición, yo tenía solamente la forma de la guinea con rostro, pero yo sabía que yo quería trabajarle el mangle porque estoy pensando en el cimarronaje, ¿verdad? Y en un tiempo pasado los cimarrones se metían en los mangles, ¿verdad? Para sobrevivir y crear su nueva vida. En esta guinea de mangle aparece en el rostro un ojo, en un lado se ve un ojo y en el otro lado no, porque estoy trabajando que las aves nos transportan, ¿verdad? O nos comunican con ese mundo superior espiritual y el otro ojo que se ve, que aparece abierto, es este mundo terrenal, ¿verdad? Las aves son una comunicación entre lo espiritual y lo terrenal. En esta pieza que está hecha en cerámica, el cuerpo de la guinea tiene talladas unas manos porque pensando que al esclavizado, ¿verdad? Al cimarrón cuando se escapaba, siempre lo estaban persiguiendo, así que trato de que esas manos sea esa sensación de que tratan de agarrarlo. Además, la gallina de Guinea es un ave que corre bien rápido y es bien difícil de agarrar. Aquí estoy utilizando las plumas de Guinea, que es la misma que utilicé en el libro Juego de Manos, eh, y otros materiales que me he encontrado como el nido, que me lo encontré en la calle. Así que voy trabajando con material también que voy encontrando. Podemos pasar a la próxima imagen, por favor. Eh, en esta serie de fotos, estas piezas estuvieron hechas en una residencia que tuve en el Museo de Arte de Puerto Rico, eh, gracias a la Fundación Daryl Chapel, en el año de 2022 a 2023. eh, Fue una residencia de un año, 9 meses para hacer la obra, ¿verdad? Y la experimentación, y 3 meses donde estuvo la obra expuesta en la Galería Cecilia Horta, que estaba en el mismo museo. En esta búsqueda de esa residencia, mi tema fue mar adentro, historias profundas, ¿verdad? Y en ese proceso de trabajo, yo estaba pensando en todo el trayecto de los esclavizados que sacaron o raptaron desde África, toda esa trayectoria en los barcos, muchos de ellos se tiraron al mar o lo mataron, y cómo ese mar se convierte en este hábitat, ¿verdad? De estos nuevos seres. Así que estuve trabajando cómo ese mar es un arrecife donde habitan esos ancestros, ¿verdad? Partiendo desde ese momento de los esclavizados, pero pensando en todos los hermanos, hermanas, hermanes dominicanos, haitianos, un momento cubano que pasan también por el Canal de la Mona para venir a Puerto Rico. Eh, es- Esta historia también surge porque yo viajé a Isla de Mona en un momento, pasé el Canal de la Mona y sé lo fuerte que es pasar ese mar, ¿verdad? Por la experiencia que tuve, así que pienso en todos estos hermanos que se tiran por ese canal, muchas y muchos de ellos no llegan, y a veces cuando llegan, ¿qué pasa? Envían a buscar a un ser querido pensando también que puede pasar por lo mismo y a lo mejor no va a llegar, ¿verdad? A lo mejor se va a ese fondo del mar. Trabajé ahí con varios medios, ¿verdad? Porque me ayuda a trabajar con varios medios y diferentes materiales a contar la historia de manera diferente. Cada material me ayuda a ir narrando de manera diferente. La primera imagen de la mano derecha, que son los ibellis del arrecife de los ancestros, es una pieza en cerámica torneada, ¿verdad? Y con partes hechas a mano, construcciones. Y estoy pensando en todos esos seres que están en ese fondo del mar y cómo se empiezan a hacer parte de esa flora marina, ¿verdad? De esa flora y de todos esos peces, esos animales, cómo se empiezan a convertir en parte de ese mundo. La siguiente pieza, que es entrada, esa pieza mide 6 pies y medio de alto como por 3 pies de ancho. La hice, yo había hecho un collage más pequeño, lo mandé a imprimir a este tamaño y sobre ese collage empecé a trabajar sobre esa imagen, porque ya no era collage, sobre esa imagen empecé a trabajar con diferentes materiales. Ahí hay eh, acrílico, papel utilicé, le digo ahora, gouache, acrílico, impresión, papel de contacto, donde fui recortando y creando unas imágenes, ¿verdad? De los peces, algunos peces ya como con cara y rostros de personas. El papel que tiene el lado dorado es un papel que se usa en Tibet para ofrenda. Ese papel se quema y es para ofrendar, ¿verdad? Para pedir unas ofrendas, hacer unas ofrendas. Así que eso es lo que marca esa pieza. Yo le llamo la entrada, porque sí, es como si tú entraras con esa, por, 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 entraras por el centro de esa figura y te metieras a ese fondo del mar, ¿verdad? Esa es mi interpretación. En la siguiente pieza que se llama El que recibe, Barum Samdi, que tiene que ver con un personaje del vudú. Estoy trabajando es un ensamblaje con diferentes materiales, ¿verdad? Caracoles, ahí hay cerámica, eh, hay un abanico marino, hay diferentes materiales. Y esa pieza para mí es el que está en ese fondo recibiendo a todos esos seres que están llegando a ese espacio, ¿verdad? Ese nuevo espacio, ese mar. El Baron Sandy trabaja con los muertos, ¿verdad? En la mitología del vudú haitiano. Así que aquí hay 3 piezas, 3 materiales diferentes, unos tridimensionales, otro bidimensional, y es lo que me ayuda a contar esa historia de El mar adentro, historia profunda. Podemos pasar al próximo, por favor. Esta es una serie que se está presentando ahora mismo en el Yunque, que el Yunque es un bosque nacional lluvioso. Esta exhibición abrió en octubre de 2024 gracias al programa de Arte Yunque de Georgie Vega. La exhibición está ahí expuesta por un año, está hasta julio del 2025. Somos 8 artistas que estamos participando en la exhibición. Está en la vereda del Yunque. Ok. eh, yo le llamé, a mi serie se llama Sobre la piel de las piedras, historias. Son piezas en cerámica pensando en las piedras quemadas a diferentes temperaturas para que ese ambiente de la lluvia, las plantas, los pájaros afecten esa superficie y la naturaleza sea parte de ese cambio en las piezas, ¿verdad? Y partiendo desde las piedras. Las piezas que están hechas en cerámica, son ricas en textura porque ahí es que está toda la historia que se va quedando sobre esa piel de la piedra, que podría ser también la piel de nosotros.
Hola, Gadiel, gracias por
Hola
compartir,
Marina.
gracias por compartirnos sobre tu trabajo. Ah, disculpa, estaba pensando en conversaciones que hemos tenido antes sobre cómo tus viajes han influenciado también. O sea, acabas de mencionar el viaje a la isla de Mona y como que la travesía por el pasaje de, de la Mona, que es súper violento,
Ujú,
muy
ujú.
peligroso. pero estaba pensando también en otros viajes que has hecho que también han sido muy importantes en el desarrollo de tu obra. Si puedes contar un poco de eso brevemente.
En el 1993 o 94 tuve la oportunidad de estar en África. Allí estuve en Senegal y en Mali. Viajé en tren de Senegal a Mali, que fueron 20 y pico de horas. En Senegal también fue bien importante porque visité la isla Gorée, donde, ¿verdad? Tenían a todos los esclavizados y de donde salían, así que esa visita fue bien impactante para mí porque, aunque sabía que, pues, que la historia había pasado, pero estar ahí y sentir toda esa vibra, pues, me concientiza más y me da más fuerza para seguir, pues, buscando sobre mi raíz.
Gracias, Gadiel.
Gracias,
Le,
Marina.
le paso ahora la batuta a Susana.
Gracias, Gadiel. Gracias, Marina. Gadiel, I think what you were just sharing about your experience in Gore, and how the land and the physical sensation really impacted your practice is something that we will hear about from a different global location as we turn our attention to the Fronterizx collective. So I'll call Gabriela and Jenea to the Zoom stage.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are so honored to be invited to take part of this conversation alongside our amazing colleagues, Charo and Gadiel, whom we admire and respect. We also want to thank our moderators, Marina and Susanna and Mary and everybody at US Latinx Forum. Our collaborative practice uplifts non-traditional infrastructures that sustain communities in the borderlands. Through skill sharing and mutual aid, we develop projects and artworks that center often overlooked experiences of women of color and explore issues of power, labor, and transnational feminisms.
Yeah, thank you all so much for being here. Buenas tardes. If we could advance to the next slide, please. In this first piece, which we undertook in 2009, this was our first collaboration. It's titled La Tapiz Fronteriza de la Virgen de Guadalupe. And it's really, it became a public intervention and performance. We created it with plants that were dead plant fiber that was harvested from the Agua Prieta Douglas border. And it was installed onto the border fence after we made handmade paper that's biodegradable. So the piece could be installed onto the fence. We left it there as an ofrenda, as an offer to those interconnected communities, and it was able to biodegrade back into the land from where it came. I think this is where we really started to explore the flora of the desert of our home as material. And we also really started to think about the fact that we are fronterizas, right? We migrate across. We have ties to on both sides, communities on both sides of these two nations that share these incredible ecosystems. And so we really, the fence itself was a material that without which we couldn't have performed and completed this work. What else can we tell you about this piece? We really were thinking about the importance of organic materials in our work. Another really important material was a collaborative aspect, which began our closest colleagues. Some of our closest colleagues took the time and generously accompanied us in this sort of pilgrimage to install the work on site. And, They actually aided in the actual installation. Jenea's family was on the US side and helped weave the piece into that space, into that structure, the fence. So our bodies became a kind of material we utilized in this performance and the installation. And we sort of really started thinking about community and that relationship that was built with that community of the place where we were working as a really important piece and kind of material that framed and gave context to our work. Next slide, please.
Okay, so this piece is titled Labor, and it all began in the summer of 2016 when we were both invited as artists to join the exhibition Push Comes to Shove, Women in Power, curated by Sarah Cochran and Muriel Magenta. And we decided, luckily, Sarah and Muriel agreed that we could collaborate on a new piece. So 7 years later, after the Tapiz piece, we came to the idea of building a wall or a structure, a sculpture that would definitely change the way like we see ourselves, we see like community and the way we work in community. So just a few years before this exhibition, I was invited by Colectiva Doble Aprieta Trabajan to paint a mural on their center. They're a self-help project in Agua Prieta, Sonora, so just south of Douglas, Arizona, where I grew up and where I was living at the time. And you know, they have a community garden, they raise livestock, they have sewing workshop and carpentry workshop. And so I was really inspired by the strength and just the abundance and production that was happening in this space. And, you know, considering the context of that time period, 2016, I really wanted to present them in these very large portraits. And Gabriela ended up coming to the center. And so we decided, since the neighborhood is really known for their brick making, it's called Colonia Ladrillera. We commissioned bricks from the women at US prices, and we serigraphed portraits of each of the members at that time onto the bricks. And so the piece took shape of a 30-foot long sculpture that bisected the gallery at the Scottsdale Museum of Contemporary Art. And, you know, it allowed us to create something that was, it was site specific for that particular exhibition. But now we've sort of divided it into 5 modular sculptures, and they've been shown in different contexts and in different spaces since that time. And, you know, it was just full circle. This past November, we were invited to present the piece at the Smithsonian American Art Museum in the Shape of Power. And it opened just days after the 2024 election. So it felt like a full circle moment. And it was wonderful. We brought Mexican earth, right? Just like we did in Scottsdale. We thought it was just so wonderful. And then to be able to do it at the same thing at our nation's capital in that specific time period. It was a wonderful moment, and it's a lot to think about. We're still processing the whole thing. But I just want to say, before we go to the next slide, that this piece was really the moment when we began to question, what does the word collaboration mean to us? What does like community art mean? And we really reflected on our practice in community and began to look for funding where we could actually pay our collaborators fair wages for cognitive labor, anything that involves the creation of artwork. And, I'm excited to say that we're continuing our collaboration with the women of Dule Prieta Trabajan. We've been in multiple exhibitions where we're each paid the same amount, and they've developed their own self-portraits and videos over a period of time of working together. So yeah, that's sort of the labor story. Next slide, please.
Yeah, this piece, Living Altar, is actually in so many ways a continuation of some of these earlier works. One of the pivotal collaborators, co-creators for the series is Ami Robles, a very talented artist from the Agua Prieta community who's worked with us in different capacities on some of these other projects and who has exhibited alongside us. I think for us, this work really takes what is a sort of private altar process making into the public space. Living Altar is a series of collaborations with various creators. The first one was Ami Robles. You see some of the work product here. Basically, the series really aims to transform the body as a site of embellishment, as a site of beauty. It adorns, we adorned each other's bodies. There's a kind of ritual practice of coming together and creating the adornments. We utilize, so for the labor piece, we serigraphed the portraits onto the bricks. And for this work, we use serigraph, the same type of ink, but we've cast it into these objects that you see. They're sort of like these kind of skins, almost like these vestments. And then Jenea that taught us how to adorn these vestments, these mini sculptures with cactus needles, which are harvested. Primarily, they fall off the cacti, various types of cacti, and then we use them to embellish. So in a lot of ways, we're continuing to utilize the desert plants and kind of that desert detritus that becomes precious. These dead plant fibers become new by transforming them into handmade paper that is made into art, that is really elevated as a gift to the community and can go back to the soil. The cactus needles then are also kind of transformed into these objects where that we use together to adorn each other. And then we bring each other out into the desert landscape. In so many ways, it's sort of another pilgrimage, like first one we made for La Tapiz Fronteriza, but in this case, we are intentionally making, co-creating artwork together. And then the participant, whoever we're working with, we document each other and we co-own whatever work is produced, we co-own. So there's, I think we are interested in the ways in which material can change and the ways in which the femme body can claim space in public land. We also use breast milk and earth in the casting of some of these vestments. So we're really, I think, still very much interested in exploring natural materials and the body, the female body inhabiting these public spaces, where we're not always made to feel welcome. So it's really a kind of playing of the private and the public, owning both of those spaces. Yeah.
Maybe before we have to seg to Charo, I'd like to ask both of you a quick question that I think will probably carry us into the Q&A. Thank you for tracing what I see as like these clear hilos in the development of your practice. One thing, you know, as I was reading about your work and seeing images, I noticed that you often recur to words like abundance and nourishment. And I was wondering if you could maybe briefly expand on those ideas that I think for many of us who live outside of the borderlands can sometimes seem contrary to what our impressions of that geography could be.
Yeah, I think, you know, this is our home, right? This thin edge of barbed wire, as has been said by Ansaldúa. I think, you know, we find this place. I mean, a lot of our work is made from the desert, right? With materials from the desert. So it's not this barren landscape. You can eat cacti. There is life here and there's beauty. Our communities attest to that. I think that is why we've been so honored and have remained in such close relationship with Dougla Prieta Trabajan, this collectiva of women who make community, who generate, you know, labor for their neighbors, who have an incredible garden where they grow region appropriate foods. I think it's like a reclamation of our own narrative of like this, of how beautiful our home is.
I know our time is up. I don't know if Jenea, you have something succinct to add, or if we should just save it to the Q&A.
No, I'll just add something really small. I think Dougla Prieta Trabajan for me, you know, especially like in our borderlands region, is just like emblematic of abundance, and it just really shows up in the way they treat each other in their community and then in their garden, and that's just, it's so inspiring. So thank you.
Thank you both. And now I will like to shift over. We can go to the next slide. And Charo, if you can join us and share just some insight into your abundant practice.
Great, thank you. Thank you, and it's wonderful to be here. Saludos a todos, and I want to thank the Latinx Artist Fellowship for giving us this wonderful opportunity, and it's such an honor to be in conversation with everyone here. So if you could put on the first slide for me, thank you. So I'm going to really concentrate my talk on materials. I am not going to expand it because I've been working for a long time and I have my social aspect of the work, sort of organization, creating organizations, and you know, festivals, international exchange. And I also work in a lot of materials, but I'm going to concentrate mostly on installation. So my first work that you see here explores the Baroque aesthetic as it was adopted by indigenous and African artists across the Americas, embodying the spirit of resistance against cultural erasure, such as we see in the Rara tradition. This mixed media blend of European Baroque elements with indigenous and African visual traditions result in a transcultural art style that challenges the dominant narrative of Western art history. The use of repurposed, found, and discarded objects, so you can see a lot of it here and all of it, speak to the themes of impermanence, sustainability, and honoring overlooked or marginalized communities. By incorporating these materials, my installations invite the viewers to consider the stories and histories embedded within everyday items with their secret histories and silent biographies that evoke us to become spiritual listeners, attentive to the echoes of other times and bodies, both alive and dead, that we can never fully know. As an artist, I'm invited to create large installations in different countries where working in these new environments, I have to find materials because I don't usually take a lot of it. I just bring a little suitcase and I have to go diving into like dumpsters and scavenging through community garbage dumps in search of these. The search process itself becomes a way for me to get to know the people and culture of the places. And it can really reveal fascinating insights to hold on to the local communities, their habits, the values, and the stories they live on. Everything that the people leave behind in the waste tells you so much. This intimate exploration of countries' refuges have become an integral part of my artistic practice, allowing me to develop a deep, multifaceted understanding of each new setting that I work within. This multifaceted approach to the materiality and cultural hybridity is central to my artistic practice, reflecting my commitment to amplifying underrepresented perspectives and forging new pathways for creative expressions. My ex-husband and I used to sell secondhand clothes, and that gave us a deep understanding of the secondhand market, where to find affordable materials. This knowledge, combined with my observation of how people in the Dominican Republic could transform spaces using minimal resources, inspired my approach to installation art. This is where I began to do installation. The act of collecting clothing and textiles can be a profound experience in itself, as these items carry memories, mana, and the dreams and love of their creators. I see this process of collecting as a ritual of giving new life to objects with care, made with care. When I look at an embroidered tablecloths, for example, I'm reminded of my family's relationship with them. The collecting these textiles and repurposing them is a practice in itself, a way to honor the labor and stories embedded within them. The work I'm showing here explores concept of sacred spaces, healing, spiritual encounters, drawing upon the rich cultural history, heritage, and aesthetic practice of the African diaspora within the Latinx community. Incorporating processional performances, I create journeys that engage with themes of mysticism, ritual, and the improvisational use of shrines to the Black history. By bringing together diverse references for ritual and ceremonies across the world, I seek to break through dominant views of history and encourage alternative futures. Situated in the intersection of creativity and healing, my practice undertakes an interpretation of the history and nature of Miami in order to initiate a process of healing and to build bridges between communities. I invite viewers to engage in a dialogue that pays deliberate attention to the vital role of the African diasporic tradition in vernacular culture, in the historical and living references. Okay, the first image you see here is titled Written Skin. In 2019, I produced this at the Project Row Houses. The work has much of the materials that I usually use, including clay. It's a very immersive experience to be in there. You're kind of surrounded by all these things. The vinyls that you see on the walls and tapes simulate veves, magical writing, which are used in voodoo ceremonies that are used to call the deities using lines and colors. The center pole, the connection of heaven and earth. You'll see this in a lot of the other slides, because this is one of those things that I have done a lot, the axis mundi. And then you see sort of like tracks that are like made of wood, signifying like the processional rituals of Rara or the saints marching in. The figures have like Elegua figureheads, like the heads of the Elegua. And on the sides, you see other ones that were more like large vessels to sort of contain the deities. And then you see the center poles that are very large here. They're like 25 feet tall, sort of like antennas. And at the end, the last one is more like a skeleton of them. So next slide, please. Okay. This series called Materials, Connections, and Rituals, a celebration of cultural tapestry. It's a return to the work I created in 2015 for the exhibition titled Repossessed. This new series resonates with my characteristic bold use of colors and my insight into movement and volume. In this work, I'm exploring and celebrating the freedom of movement between abstract and figurative painting. A key element is the use of various materials such as strings, plastic ribbons, and rope, which I often employ in my installations, sculptures, and performance work. These materials serve as a metaphorical connection, evoking ideas of binding, pulling together, gathering, and tying. My references for this use of materials include the Nkisi sculptures and the Paquet Congo of Haiti, of Haitian voodoo, where strings are used as symbolic and umbilical cord to connect the living and the spirit world. Color also plays a significant role in this new series. As a colorist, I ascribe meaning to colors, using them as healing devices or as a means to exchange different types of energy. The pieces in this series are about delinking from old patterns to create something new, reflecting the constant motion and transformation of life itself. In this work, I explore the idea of painting and not painting. I paint large pieces of canvas, and then I cut and reassemble them, creating a sense of discovery in the process. The physicality of painting, such as throwing paint on the canvas, is an important aspect of my practice, as I see painting as both an action and a performance. By merging the different media I work with, I aim to create a cohesive and dynamic tapestry of materials, connections, and rituals. And this new body of work connections with my long-standing engagement with chaos and synergy is also evident, adding a palpable dimension to the exploration of interconnectedness. The new sculptures are gestural abstract painted wooden objects born out of the concept of building without a predetermined plan, emphasizing improvisational and a hint of performance. The sculptures suggest themselves as vessels of energy or the conduits through which energy flows. I apply paint to these wooden structures to activate them, imbuing them with a sense of anointment and invoking the essence of chakra stones, symbolizing the emanation of energy within the earth or the human body. Okay, so we can go on to the next piece. The third one is called the Heyoka, an installation influenced by the animistic traditions of the Dominican Republic and the neighboring Haiti, which also encompass a lot of the Gaga ritual, which are based on the indigenous cultures of the Taino people, including parallel characters and archetypes to the Heyoka of the Great Plain nations. I'm drawn to the diverse expression of this concept across the pre-Columbian culture of the Americas. Called to the Heyoka is an immersive art installation celebrating spiritual traditions and nature based on pre-Columbian concept of the sacred clown. I have been drawn to these concepts and its iteration across cultures, from the medieval fool, the Hecate, the ancient Greeks' mythological goddess associated with crossroads, entrances, the night and light, to the Orisha of the Elegua, the spirit of the crossroads, who loves tricks and riddles, as a way to make sense of the nonsensical times we live in. The hallmark of the sacred clown is the truth that cuts through the lies and occlusions of the dominant forces. The sacred clown is often the master of the crossroads, who serves as an intermediary between the earthly and spiritual realm. This is how I see the role of the artist: the intermediary, the gateway to the unknown, the human who makes the unconscious visible. Some of the sculptures are based on the entire elder members of the Gaga rite, and the pieces hanging in the center is based on the concept of the Potomitan, which you saw before. This work also has a strong connection to Baroque art in the Churrigueresco style. I seek to shift perspective and encourage a more inclusive understanding of art history My pieces celebrate the diverse creative traditions that have flourished outside the European canon, breathing new life into discarded materials to tell the untold stories, guided by a reverence for the past and a drive for social consciousness. I hope to inspire a deeper appreciation for the overlooked contributions of Indigenous and African artists across the Americas. In general, I aim to embody the idea of radical optimism. And so I wanted to conclude with the work, and in this case, I actually made a sculpture rather than just put a sort of video consultation. So anyway, I want to conclude with that.
Charo, thank you so much for your words. I think, your work is obviously so visually layered, dense, syncretic, and I think in what you just shared, you really helped distill just some of the very complex theoretical and spiritual underpinnings behind it. So thank you for that. Just to launch us into a quick question before we open to the group. I wanted to ask you, a lot of the words that you've used to describe your pieces, you've referenced umbilical cords, skin, energies. So I was wondering if you could share a little bit about some of like the bodily implications of your pieces, whether that's in your physical making or in what you read in terms of their aesthetics.
Well, I think that, when I start making these works, I often don't even really think a lot about what I'm trying to do. It just kind of starts to happen. And, like, for example, in these pieces that look like rah-rah dancers, I think it's just the materials in itself talks to you and tells you, what it wants to do. And, and sometimes it could be, the like in the case of the Potomitan, the center pole, which is something that I find really fascinating, because I just, the idea of like an antenna, and the idea of where the saints come down, and the idea that, we have that in most of the religions. You have these like copulas, or you have these obelisks, and we're constantly reaching up to the heavens. And I like to do it, but I like to do it in the way that we, the people in the Caribbean, or the people without a lot of funds, can do it, because we can recreate all of this without a lot of money. It doesn't take a lot of funds. Takes more of the desire and the energy to do these objects, So I don't know. I just they basically, I mean, I work a lot almost in a trance, to tell you the truth. When I start working, that's why I have to have all these materials around, so that I can just start to just let the energy tell me the whatever come through, but I work from one work to another very much. So they fuel each other, and I don't necessarily set out to do something that looks like something. Like when I set out to do these pieces, was I thinking I'm going to do, I don't think so. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. I mean, I definitely see many of these as dancers, and I think that kind of generative nature of your work, maybe to make a bad metaphor, maybe we can use that as the excuse to bring all of us together to talk more broadly about questions and concepts across all of your practices.
Yes, thank you, Charo, for your presentation, and everybody else, Gadiel, Jenea, Gabriela. Thank you all for being so generous with your, with your work, with what you shared about what you do, and the reasons, and the communities to which you speak, from where you've come from. I think I'm gonna ask everybody to turn their cameras and microphones on, please. I mean, I encourage people from the audience to drop questions that they may have in the Q&A. But in this session, we're also gonna try to encourage more of a conversation amongst the artists. And we actually have some questions that they have for each other, which I think is something that usually in these type of events is a little bit left out. You know, everybody's speaking to an audience and speaking to us as moderators or like as curators or art historians, but there is a lot to be learned from each other's practices, and we want to highlight this in this event as well. Gadiel, I'm going to start with the questions that the artists provided that are for everybody, so everybody can feel that they can chime in whenever they want. And Gadiel had a question for everybody, which is, who do you do your artistic work for? And in the process of creating a piece, do you think about where it will be displayed or who will see it? Whoever wants to jump in first can go ahead. Gadiel, you can also feel free to answer your own question.
Claro.
Bueno,
Charo, yeah.
Charo, va.
bueno, I really think it depends on where the work is going. The only time I really think about where it's going to go and who I'm making it for is when it's a public piece, because you have to be so aware of the dialogue it's going to have with, whoever is going to be, where it's going to be placed, because it's vulnerable. It's, you leave it out in the open and it could be damaged or it could be loved, and you have to really make sure that you know who you're talking to and that these people are going to understand it, respect it, and love it, because otherwise you could really see, the results. So that's probably the only time I really, really think about it. Otherwise, I just do what I have to do.
Actually, this brought to mind a recent post that I saw from you because of the work that you're presenting in Miami. I think it's like Lincoln Road, right? Is it on Lincoln Road?
No, it's actually on Collins Avenue. It's on a window. The windows, yeah.
Yeah, so I was also thinking about that. Like you're obvious, I mean, it's all around the windows of this building. So obviously, like you're thinking the work, it is sheltered, but it's also in a very, very public place.
Mm-hmm.
Gabriela or Jenea, what are your thoughts on this, since you're also, interacting so much with communities?
I'll jump in. I'm sorry, I can't turn on my camera, but I would just like to say, Gabriela and I have this discussion often, and we really do create work for each other, but also like our families, our communities, of course, our extended families, and also we think about like the future, what our children will, how will they take in the work. Yeah, we're in this sort of like awareness that we're in dialogue with also artists who have come before us. We're part of this continuum of our contemporary colleagues and these amazing, powerful women who have laid or carved out groundwork for us to actually walk on. Artists like Laura Aguilar, Ana Mendieta, Amalia Mesa Baines, just to name a few. And yeah, we just feel really privileged to be like in a space where our work is like in conversation in this context of a conversation, whether it's contemporary art, but art that is made in the borderlands.
Yeah, I mean, we both have daughters. And so I think like, we want our children, and Jenea has, a son. And I think we're trying to like make work that, it makes us feel good about who we are in this place, that allows us to like claim and own our histories, our very layered histories, and that, in some ways is reclamation of the ways in which we are inhabiting our home and the ways in which we perceive our own lives, right? Like we're trying to sort of reclaim our narratives. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I can identify a lot with what you all are saying from very different place in the world, but most definitely. I mean, all the projections that people in place receive and how you want to translate that and make it into something that you feel that is actually your own and that represents you and is part of a legacy is like really important. Gadiel, I'm gonna switch to Spanish with Gadiel. Gadiel, esta misma pregunta que tú le haces a tus compañeras artistas, me parece que es súper pertinente para la obra que estás presentando ahora mismo en el Yunque. Así que me gustaría
Ok,
que también comentes sobre eso, que estabas pensando al crear una obra que está tan hecha para que sea afectada por los elementos.
ok. Por lo regular trabajo para mí, ¿verdad? Cuando digo para mí, no estoy pensando para dónde va, sino que es ese gozo mío, medio egoísta, y gozo y pensar en el, como decía Charo, sin pensar en el proceso, ¿verdad? Me voy como una media unidad entre los materiales, la energía, ¿verdad? Y por ahí sale algo. En este caso del proyecto del Yunque, como era, ¿verdad? Es una comisión, era para un espacio específico, pues sí, se visitó el espacio, visité el espacio, escogí un área y pensé esas piezas que estaba haciendo, que el espacio estuviera a tono, ¿verdad? Con las piezas, porque yo quería que estas piezas la gente pudiera pasar cerca de ellas, que la pueda tocar porque son ricas en textura y esa textura va a hablar. Así que el espacio fue bien importante, te diría, para el tipo de pieza que hice y donde las puse, porque primero yo hice un recorrido por la vereda, había visto otro espacio que estaba más lejos, ¿verdad? La gente no iba a tener tanto acceso al espacio, así que no me funcionaba con la idea que ella venía, que quería hacer con el trabajo. Así que en este caso, el espacio fue bien importante para la pieza que hice.
Gracias. Ah,
Gracias a usted.
sí, de hecho, tengo que ir. Charo, ¿querías decir algo?
Yeah, let me unmute myself. Okay.
No, te escuchamos.
Ok, fíjate, la obra mía que está muy cargada con cosas espirituales, cosas de esas, ahora mismo hay más aceptación a ese tipo de obra, pero somebody said to me once, it's hopelessly religious, and which I never really, it wasn't so much religious as it was spiritual, but there was a lot of,
Ujú.
drawback for that, and there still is. There are people who really do not like that kind of work. Or even sometimes if you use things like dolls, you'd get all kinds of reactions from all kinds of people. There's people you think are going to have that kind of reaction because they sort of see it very little. They'll see it as a child rather than, as a deity, kind of like the way the Africans use it. So one has to be so careful in that sense, because not that I want to sort of curtail myself, I don't want to stop myself from doing what I want to do, but you have to understand how there's a lot of people when it comes to anything like that who can be very offended and and also put you down. I mean, I think I've suffered a lot of that. I mean, today it's much easier, but back when I started doing this in the 80s, it's a different story.
And did you see where did you see most that change of in perception in South Florida or the Dominican Republic, elsewhere?
Well, In South Florida, probably more so because there's been more acceptance, to a certain degree, especially after the Black Lives Matters, all that, there's been, I mean, I've seen a lot of people, younger artists doing things that I did back in early 80s or, and it's much more accepted now. Back then it was, and Dominican Republic can be actually dangerous when you speak about voodoo. You have to really layer it and put it in ways that is not at your face, because the situation there can be quite volatile, and you can get police stopping you from doing something. I've had that happen to artists that I've had in my events and my projects. They can tell you, I've had someone say they're going to bomb my window in Miami because they said that was not Dominican, because they saw it as voodoo. So you can get a lot of different reactions no matter where you are when it comes to that, because because it depends, like in Dominican Republic, it can might have to do with the Haitian. In Miami, it could also, it can be from all, not just, other Dominicans, but it could be from other people who just, find that difficult to deal with.
Yeah. I think that this also transitions us into the questions shared by Gabriela and Jenea. They ask everybody, how do you see the materials in your work evolving or transforming over time? And do you intentionally design for that change?
Is the question for me?
Who wants to go first? Yeah, it's for everybody. And Charo, you have a very wide range, to talk about too. Gabriela and Jenea, do you wanna give it a go?
Yeah, I think, when we connected to just meet each other and do a kind of initial learning a little bit more about each other's practice, we were just Jenea and I were just so inspired and intrigued by the breadth of the artistic practice of Gadiel and Charo, but also the ways in which, like, for example, Charo, what you mentioned about the ways in which you will, different elements of your installations will manifest and become part of like other work. Like we are hoping to learn a little bit more about like some of that, how some of that happens and manifests. Gadiel, as a printmaker, as a trained printmaker, we're super intrigued about some of your your artist bookmaking practice. We're just selfishly wanted to hear more about both of your work.
Well, Gabriel, ¿quieres hablar? Habla.
Dale, hablo. Bueno, la pregunta primero sobre los materiales, ¿verdad? Sobre los materiales, en mi caso, me doy cuenta que donde he vivido, el espacio donde vivo, en un momento vivía en el viejo San Juan, caminaba mucho, recogía muchos materiales, ¿verdad? Había muchas cosas en la calle, así que encuentro que donde el lugar que habito influye en mi trabajo, ¿verdad? Encontraba mucho material en la calle, cosas en madera, mucho desecho. Vivía en un espacio que todos éramos artistas, en el viejo San Juan, un espacio amplio, así que guardaba mucho material, ¿verdad? Y mi obra, lo que hice en ese momento, era con mucho material encontrado. Luego me mudo a Santurce, un apartamento, eh, y me muevo más en el carro y empieza a cambiar los materiales que consigo y cómo mi obra va hablando, ¿verdad? Así que encuentro que los materiales y el espacio que habito es bien importante en mi trabajo, como mi trabajo se va haciendo. En cuanto al libro, que aparece que es un libro de artista pop-up, eso fue un taller que tomé con una artista puertorriqueña, Raquel Quijano. eh, Y pues fueron 3 o 4 meses, no me acuerdo, porque había que aprender toda la estructura del libro, porque ese libro, según va abriendo hay mucho funcionamiento, ¿verdad? Así que está la parte técnica y cuando llegó el momento de ya terminarlo, pues yo quise trabajar con ese tema que fue con collage, que eran muchas imágenes que tenía guardadas y cómo esas imágenes se fueron, como decía Charo ahorita, fueron dialogando una con otra y ellas se fueron montando. Yo me acuerdo que yo trabajé ese libro de 8 de la noche a 4 de la mañana, ¿verdad? Yo estuve toda esa noche metido en ese viaje y fue súper rico porque todo fue cayendo, ¿verdad? Yo sabía que, más o menos sabía que quería trabajar con mar porque estoy bien consciente que vivo en una isla y quería que ese elemento estuviese ahí, ¿verdad? Así que te diría que es eso, es esa parte de los momentos, donde el lugar que habito, los materiales y emociones que estoy viviendo, ¿verdad? Que vivo y cómo eso se sale en la obra que esté haciendo, ¿verdad? Y los materiales, por eso me gusta también cambiarle materiales, igual que me pasa con el barro yo tengo que dialogar con el barro, ¿verdad? Me gusta mucho trabajarlo, pero yo cuando estaba haciendo ese proyecto de las piedras, del yunque, yo puedo terminar esa forma y cuando la tengo en el horno explota. Y cuando explota, ya para mí, porque yo trabajo con, ¿verdad? Con energía, con emociones, ya eso que explotó quedó, porque aunque yo vuelva a hacer otra pieza, la intención no va a ser la misma.
Ujú.
Pues más o menos por ahí.
Sí, bueno, para mí, tú sabes, como yo trabajo en la instalación tanto, y la instalación y son grandes y a veces son en diferentes ciudades, luego te mandan para atrás muchas de los materiales que tienes. Y claro, I'm actually talking in Spanish. Let me talk in English. The actually, the problem with installation is you work with a lot of materials and then storage, storage is a limited thing. And I like to keep my
Ujú,
stuff close by because I think if you put them in a storage, space, that's like dead, So I tend to reuse my stuff over and over, and
ujú,
I will take it and transform it, and it becomes another sculpture. I'll take, like these kind of ropes that were made with fabric by students. I redid these, and then I, added a new element. I have one piece that has kept changing over years. It was born in 1999, I think it was, and now it's had its latest reiteration, I think, 2022 or something like that. And I just keep adding and changing and adding new things because the actual basic form, which actually was a Christmas tree, has just, it allows you to do all this, and I can, go into it and cut into it and then add more stuff. So for me, taking these materials and reusing them, but in a way it's not just reusing them, but you're taking the idea further. The idea, as you change it and transform it, becomes deeper, becomes wider, becomes it, just because you're not just, it's not just an element, it's actual work that, an idea that you had. So for me, doing that is so
ujú.
enriching. And I really, just really love creating from older pieces, and or it's stacking them differently or whatever. It's fun and it's great. It's enriching.
Definitely. Charo, you shared specific questions for our other panelists.
Right.
Uh,
Did I read
yeah,
them? Let me see.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, let me see if I can
If you
find.
have them at hand, yeah.
I do, yes. So I had a
Amazing.
question for Gadiel. Um, tu, tu trabajo se nutre de experiencias ancestrales y observaciones del mundo natural, informado por la espiritualidad afrocaribeña. Puedes discutir ejemplos específicos de cómo integras estos elementos y el significado que tienen para ti y tu práctica. Que aunque yo sé que lo he dicho un poco, pero me encantaría que lo
Sí,
fueras un poquito más.
ok, pues voy a tomar el que tenía la guinea de mangle, ¿verdad?
Ujú.
Que ahí estamos trabajando con la guinea, ese elemento que se usaba, ¿verdad? En la santería, como lo estaba trabajando allí también llevándolo al sincretismo. el pensamiento que tengo de las aves con ese plano superior, ¿verdad? Y la tierra, esa nos une y nos comunica. Tengo trabajos que son estos pájaros como si nos estuvieran haciendo secretos, diciendo secretos, ¿verdad? Me acuerdo también de mi abuela cuando me criaba que a cierta hora venían todas estas aves volando y a lo mejor no era la hora que siempre lo hacían. Ella decía, por ahí viene la lluvia. La cuestión también de cómo ese contacto, la importancia de la naturaleza, ¿verdad? Cómo observamos la naturaleza. Pues ahí es que está, y de las experiencias como la misma del viaje Y entonces con esa parte de cimarronaje estaba reflexionando sobre este nuevo cimarronaje, porque hoy en día con toda esta, ¿verdad? Con todo esto que se está trabajando para sacar personas de un país y llevarlos supuestamente al país de donde nacieron o donde salieron, hay que hacer cimarronaje porque tú tienes que buscar hacia dónde te mueves o hacia dónde te escondes y hacer otra nueva vida. No sé si más o menos hay contexto.
Sí, interesante. Sí, y tenía preguntas también. I had some other questions for the Fronterizx collective. How do you see the materials in your work evolving or transforming over time? And do you intentionally design for that change?
Yeah, I think for some of that change we plan, and for some it just happens upon us. There are some change that I think we make intentional in, in some of the materials we use, like handmade papers that we use in nature and that we know will biodegrade. There are other materials that, the bricks that we commission from the La Prieta Trabajan. We did that initial installation with the 300 bricks as one performance, one sculpture. And then those pieces have evolved unto themselves. They are now, the original work had 10 portraits of the core members at the time, 5 on each side. Those are now 5 discrete sculptures in the round. And every time each of those works gets installed, the shape, the number of bricks shifts because we have 300 of them. And the actual serigraph pieces of it, might be 15 or 20. And so we have so much material to change them depending on the site where they are installed. And the other thing is that the bricks themselves, so they're fired, on the ground. They do their own type of firing where they lay them on the ground, and that's how they are fired. And so they fire them in batches, and it was a particularly rainy year. And so some of the bricks are sort of starting to like desmoronarse a little bit, that some of the soil is starting to come off of them as we install them. And at first we didn't know how to address it, right? It was like a flaw. But at this point, we love it. It sort of it's like a record of this organism. And it just reminds you, there's this, whenever I think of the Agua Prieta Douglas community, I think of this one day where we were harvesting dead plant fiber, and it was a really windy day, and you could see the earth, like the soil, right? La tierra, la polvadera, would send earth from one side, from the Mexican side to the US side across the fence. And then as the wind shifted, you would see the soil go to the other side, right? There's this impermanence to nationhood. And I love this idea that, yeah, like the soil, the objects we create are impermanent unto themselves, even these sculptures, right, that we believe are fixed, that everything is sort of organic to some extent or another. Thanks for the question and for sharing so much of your work.
Well, I think that we're gonna start wrapping up. Thank you so much for your answers. I'm gonna give the mic over to Susanna to say a few words.
I think perhaps the mic is for Mary to conclude our to conclude today's panel. But I want to say thank you to all of the artists. As I mentioned in the beginning, today's talk, we've been meeting for a few months now to get to the conversation that we had today. And so it's just a real joy to see how all of our collective dialogues have added up to this. So thank you.
Yes,
And
and
Mary,
thank you. And thank you for the audience for showing up.
Gracias. Gracias.
I just want to echo our collective gratitude, to Gadiel, Charo, Gabriela, and Jenea, as well as to Marina and Susanna, to our partners at El Museo del Barrio and Museo Mac, and Babia Collective for all of your support, collaboration, and partnership to bring this conversation to life. This has been such a rich and nuanced conversation, and I'm especially grateful that we'll be able to revisit it in coming weeks when the recording is available. So thank you all so much, and we'll see you in the near future. Take good care and have a good night.